Okay, so here's a wild thought for you. What if you aren't really one single person? What if you're actually two? Today, we're diving into this fascinating idea of your two selves, a hidden conflict that's running in the background of your mind, shaping pretty much everything: your choices, your happiness, and even how you remember your own life. So let's start with a little thought experiment. Picture your last vacation. Now be honest, was every single second of it just perfect? Probably not, right? Maybe your flight got delayed, or it rained for a day, or you had one meal that was just awful. But when you think back on it now, what pops into your head? It's probably the amazing sunset, or that one great laugh you had. So which one is more important? The thousands of moments you actually lived, or the story you tell yourself about it later? This exact puzzle is at the core of some groundbreaking work by the Nobel laureate Daniel Kahneman. He suggested that we don't have just one unified consciousness. Nope. Instead, he says we have two different selves inside our heads, and they're constantly fighting for control. Kahneman breaks it down like this. On one side, you've got the experiencing self. This is the you that lives in the present moment. It's the part of you that feels the warmth of the coffee cup in your hands or the sting of a paper cut. It's all about the now. But then you have the remembering self. This is your internal storyteller. It doesn't record your life like a video camera. Instead, it picks and chooses, creating a highlight reel that focuses on the most intense moments and, crucially, how things ended. And here's the kicker. The remembering self is the one calling the shots on all our big life decisions. Now, this whole setup isn't some random bug in our system, it's a feature. It's actually a huge evolutionary advantage. Think about it. Our experiencing self helped our ancestors react instantly to, say, a tiger jumping out of the bushes. But it was the remembering self that helped them learn the lesson: hey, maybe let's not go hang out by those bushes anymore. You absolutely needed both to survive. But that brings up a really modern question, right? An AI can store information perfectly, every single bit and byte, with none of the biases of our remembering self. So why do we humans need this messy two-part system? Why aren't our minds just like a computer? Well, the answer boils down to this one super important concept: qualia. It sounds fancy, but it's really simple. It's the what it's like part of any experience. A computer can analyze all the data about the color red, its wavelength, its place on the spectrum, but it can never know what it's like to actually see red. That purely personal internal feeling, that's qualia. And that's exactly why the two selves idea just doesn't work for AI. An AI is all about raw data, not stories. It doesn't have any of those subjective feelings, no qualia, so it can't even have an experiencing self to begin with. Without that, the whole distinction between living a moment and remembering it becomes totally meaningless for a machine. But let's push that idea. What if we tried to build it? What if we gave a robot the most advanced sensors for sight and touch and smell imaginable? Could it then, actually start to feel something? Right now, the consensus is a pretty firm no. See, sensors just provide data, input signals. They don't create a subjective internal experience. Think of it like a thermostat. It can sense the temperature for sure, but it doesn't feel cold. It's just processing a signal, which is a world away from a conscious experience. Now, in the philosophy of mind, there are basically two big camps on this issue. On one side, you have the functionalists. They argue that, hey, if a machine processes information in a way that's complex enough to perfectly imitate a human, then maybe we have to admit it has a mind. But then the other side, the phenomenal consciousness folks, they push back and say, nope, no matter how perfect the processing is, it can never, ever create that subjective first-person feeling, that qualia. So if we're trying to figure out if anything, has an internal, subjective world, what's our best test? Well, a lot of philosophers and scientists point to one thing: pain. Pain isn't just a data point, it's a deeply, fundamentally unpleasant feeling. It's one of the clearest signs we have that something has a first-person perspective. And that idea, of course, leads us straight to the animal kingdom. We're pretty darn sure that many animals feel pain, which just blows the doors wide open on a huge and very complex ethical conversation about consciousness and our relationship with other living beings. And this brings us to a question that, let's be honest, makes a lot of people really uncomfortable. If a pig can feel pain just like a dog can, why do we treat one like a member of the family and the other one like food? On the surface, it just seems completely illogical. But the answer isn't necessarily a failure of logic. It might just be that our decision-making happens in different layers. So step one is the biological fact. Okay, this animal feels pain. Step two is the moral evaluation. Based on that fact, should we try to avoid harming it? And finally, step 3 is where our cultural norms come in and decide how we apply that rule. The really important part is that getting through one step doesn't automatically get you to the next. So, the reason our treatment of animals can seem so inconsistent isn't really hypocrisy. It's just a reflection of these incredibly complex social structures. An animal's status in our society is shaped by its cultural role, our relationship to it, religion, economics, all sorts of things that go way beyond just its ability to feel pain. Okay, so let's circle all the way back to where we started this whole journey, Kahneman's Two Selves. The reason this theory is still so hotly debated isn't about the science. It's because it forces us to ask one of the biggest, oldest philosophical questions there is. What actually makes a life a good life? The debate really splits into two camps. On one side, people argue that life is the story we tell ourselves about it. Our remembering self is the CEO. It makes the big calls in our careers, our relationships, our futures, and that story is what defines our life satisfaction. But the critics fire back. They say, hold on, what about our actual moment-to-moment happiness? They argue that the remembering self is a totally biased and unreliable narrator, and that a happy life should be measured by the quality of our experiences, not our flawed memories of them. And at the end of the day, you realize this isn't something science can ever really settle for us. There's no right or wrong answer you can find in a lab. It all comes down to a personal philosophical priority. What do you value more? A life filled with happy moments, or a life that makes for a really great story? And that leaves us with one last question. Just for you. The next time you have to make a choice, big or small, just ask yourself, which self are you really living for? The one who has to experience it in the moment, or the one who gets to tell the story about it later? It's definitely something to think about.